Ever wonder how much power the U.S. really has in Asia? Some countries think they're allies, but behind the scenes, America might just be using them for its own benefits. In this video, we talk about the 7 Asian countries the U.S. is using for its own gain and explain the real reasons behind this. And now, let's dive in. Number 7. Japan. Japan is one of the world's strongest economies, but even this advanced nation plays a role in America's global plans. How exactly does the U.S. gain from Japan? For one, Japan provides a base for thousands of U.S. troops, allowing America to maintain a strong military presence in East Asia without spending too much. In return, Japan gets security support, but at the cost of some independence in defense decisions. The U.S. also benefits from Japan's high-tech industries. American companies rely heavily on Japanese innovation, from semiconductors to cars to power their own markets, yet trade deals often favor U.S. profit more than Japan's. Some Japanese citizens believe their country is being used as a shield in America's strategy against China. While Japan benefits from peace and trade stability, the truth is that the U.S. gets the bigger slice: military access, tech advantages, and regional dominance. Japan's loyalty keeps America's power in Asia alive, even if it means Tokyo's hands are tied in major global issues. The partnership might look balanced, but in the background, it's clear who's holding the real power. Still, Japan remains crucial to U.S. interests, but many argue America gains more, using Japan's technology, trade routes, and defense bases to secure its power in Asia. Oh, before we go to the next country, comment down below where you are watching. We love to know where you are from. And now, let's go to the next country. Number 6. South Korea. South Korea is one of the U.S.'s strongest allies, but this relationship often leans heavily toward American interests. Many people ask, is the U.S. truly protecting South Korea or maintaining its own control in Asia? The U.S. has over 25,000 troops stationed there, not just to defend the Korean peninsula, but to secure America's own influence near China and North Korea. This gives Washington a strategic advantage that South Korea can't easily refuse. Military contracts and trade policies often favor the U.S., making it difficult for Seoul to fully act on its own. Even in technology and defense industries, American companies dominate joint ventures. While South Korea benefits from security and innovation, it's also bound to follow many U.S. decisions. Whenever global issues arise, South Korea often stands with the U.S., even when it's not in its best interest. This loyalty sometimes comes with limits, making many Koreans wonder if they're allies or assets. In 2026, South Korea remains a valuable part of America's plan to keep its power in Asia, but it's becoming clearer that the relationship is built on U.S. needs first and mutual benefits second. Number 5. Philippines. The Philippines has long been one of America's closest allies in Asia, but in 2026, many believe the U.S. is using the country more than helping it. Why do experts say that? Because most U.S. military deals and projects serve American goals. First, the U.S. has access to military bases and training sites across Philippine territory, giving it a powerful position near the South China Sea. These areas allow America to watch China closely and expand its defense presence in Asia, something that benefits Washington more than Manila. While the U.S. often talks about protecting the Philippines, locals question if it's really for their safety or for American control in the region. Economically, aid from the U.S. comes with hidden expectations, often pushing the Philippines to support U.S. policies. In truth, the Philippines gains little compared to what America gets: influence, power, and access. The partnership remains strong on paper, but in reality, it's clear that the U.S. has more to gain, especially as tensions rise in the Pacific. The Philippines may seem like a partner, but it's slowly realizing it might just be a pawn in America's bigger strategy. Wait! If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. And now, let's go to the next country. Number 4. Taiwan. Taiwan is one of the Asian countries the U.S. is clearly using for its own gain, especially in politics and defense. Why is the U.S. so focused on Taiwan? Because it's a key point against China's growing power in Asia. America provides Taiwan with advanced weapons and strong military support. But many say this help isn't free. It's part of a bigger U.S. plan to maintain control in the region. The U.S. benefits by using Taiwan as a strategic partner to pressure China and protect its interests in the Pacific. American companies also rely on Taiwan's semiconductor industry, which produces chips needed for phones, cars, and computers. Without Taiwan, the U.S. tech industry would face serious problems. While the U.S. claims it's protecting democracy in Taiwan, many see it as protecting its business and military goals instead. Taiwan, on the other hand, continues to depend heavily on American protection, making it difficult to stand on its own. In 2026, Taiwan remains a strong ally, but the relationship is far from equal. The U.S. gains global power and economic advantage, while Taiwan carries the risk of becoming a battleground in U.S.-China tensions. If tensions rise between the U.S. and China, Taiwan could face the worst consequences, while America stays distant. Many experts believe the U.S. is securing its influence at Taiwan's expense, ensuring it remains dependent. In reality, the U.S. gains power, while Taiwan shoulders the danger of political and economic pressure. Number 3. Vietnam. Vietnam has become one of the fastest-growing economies in Asia, and the U.S. has found ways to use that growth for its own benefit. After the U.S. moved much of its manufacturing out of China, Vietnam became the next big stop. American companies now rely heavily on Vietnam's low-cost labor, strategic location, and growing infrastructure to produce everything from smartphones and clothing to electronic parts and furniture. These products are then shipped worldwide, bringing huge profits to American corporations, while Vietnam earns only a small portion of the total value. But here's something to think about. Who truly wins in this partnership? While Vietnam gains more jobs and foreign investments, the U.S. gains influence, control, and cheaper production costs. This setup helps America maintain its supply chains and keep prices stable for its consumers, while Vietnam remains dependent on U.S. trade and policies. Beyond manufacturing, the U.S. also uses Vietnam politically. As tensions rise with China, America sees Vietnam as a key ally to strengthen its presence in the South China Sea. Military cooperation and diplomatic ties have increased, but it also puts Vietnam in a tricky position, stuck between two powerful nations. In short, Vietnam's growth story benefits both sides. But it's clear that the U.S. gains more control and strategic advantage from this growing partnership. This shows how Vietnam's progress, while impressive, still serves larger U.S. goals. America gains more influence, profit, and power, while Vietnam continues to depend on American trade and diplomacy. Number 2, India. India stands as one of the biggest Asian countries the U.S. is using for its own gain, and Iran is one of the clearest proofs. On the surface, India and the U.S. seem to share a strong relationship built on trade, defense, and democratic values. But look closer, and a troubling pattern emerges. The U.S. sees India as a key tool in its strategy, not just against China, but now directly against Iran. For years, Iran was one of India's most important oil suppliers and strategic partners. India had invested nearly $500 million into Iran's Chabahar port, a vital gateway, giving New Delhi direct access to Afghanistan, Central Asia, and Europe, bypassing Pakistan entirely. But in 2026, the U.S. revoked the sanctions waiver protecting that project and threatened India with 25% tariffs on any country doing business with Tehran. India was essentially forced to choose Iran or America. Under pressure, India transferred its $120 million financial commitment to Iran, quietly walked away from Chabahar, and watched its own board members resign just to avoid U.S. sanctions penalties. A strategic investment decades in the making, abandoned because Washington demanded it. But it didn't stop there. The U.S. and Israel launched surprise airstrikes on Iran on February 28, 2026, killing Iran's supreme leader. India, a longtime friend of Thrawn, stayed completely silent when a U.S. submarine sank an Iranian warship that had been returning from military exercises hosted by India itself. New Delhi said nothing. Prime Minister Modi even visited Israel days before the strikes began, raising serious questions about how much India truly knew. Does India benefit from any of this? Not completely. It lost its Chabahar investment, surrendered access to cheap Iranian oil, and abandoned its own strategic interests in the region. All to satisfy Washington. America used India's desperation for a trade deal to strip away its independence and force it into an anti-Iran corner. In 2026, India may appear as a rising power on the world stage. But behind the scenes, it remains a vital piece in America's game, a country the U.S. relies on not to empower, but to use for its own advantage. Number 1. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is one of the strongest U.S. partners in Asia. But in 2026, the Iran connection reveals just how deeply America has been using the kingdom for its own agenda. For decades, Saudi Arabia's greatest fear has been Iran, its rival for regional power, its religious opposite, and a constant threat to its influence across the Middle East. The U.S. knew this, and America used that fear perfectly. Washington has long supplied Saudi Arabia with billions in weapons, military protection, and political backing. Not purely out of friendship, but because a Saudi Arabia hostile to Iran serves American interests. Every weapon sold, every defense deal signed, was designed to keep Saudi Arabia dependent on the U.S. while pointing the kingdom's anger directly at Thrawn. In 2026, it came to a head. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made multiple phone calls to Trump, personally urging him to launch military action against Iran. Saudi Arabia even lobbied behind closed doors for the strike. And on February 28, 2026, it happened. The U.S. and Israel launched surprise airstrikes on Iran, killing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Saudi Arabia had pushed for this moment for years. But here is the part America never warned them about. Iran immediately retaliated, firing missiles and drones not just at Israel, but directly at Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar. Saudi oil infrastructure, military sites, airports, and civilian areas were all struck. The kingdom had lobbied loudly for war, and suddenly, war came home. Saudi Arabia found itself dragged into a conflict it could not fully control, attacked by the very nation America had promised to contain. Does Saudi Arabia benefit equally from this partnership? Not at all. The U.S. used Saudi Arabia's deep fear of Iran to justify decades of weapons sales, lock in oil agreements, and build military bases across the Gulf. Washington made billions, while Saudi Arabia became both a tool and a target. In 2026, America calls it an alliance, but in reality, it is a relationship built entirely on U.S. advantage, making Saudi Arabia the clearest example of how America uses nations for its own benefit. Thanks for watching. Before you go, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash the notification bell. Out of these 7 countries, which one do you think the U.S. relies on the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading and replying to as many as possible.